All right. Well, this is my first time going Facebook Live with this. I have no idea if this is going to work. So, I don't know. I'll see later. But anyway, welcome. I am going to start doing videos about Montessori and about Montessori education, um, mostly about interesting topics about Montessori. So, what I want to do first, I want to introduce this person, Charlotte Cushman. Charlotte Cushman is a retired AMI Montessori teacher. She's written a ton of blog posts for this really interesting website, which we'll get into. But uh, she popped up in the Montessori world recently for a blog post that was completely made no sense and was confusing, and we'll talk about what that was in a little bit. Um, that's really what we're here to talk about was her weird blog post. So welcome. I am Matt Bronsil. I am with a new website that I will have out this week. It's not out yet, so don't go to it yet, but it's called I'mOntosomething.com. A pun on Montessori's word. I'mOntosomething.com. And yeah, I like puns. But anyway, this blog post that we're talking about, it was on this website called American Thinker. Now, we'll get into what American Thinker is, but just it's a really weird, crazy conspiracy website. But here was the post that is in question. This is by C.M. Cushman, which was obviously Charlotte Cushman. Her writing style is the same. Her points are exactly the same person. She just didn't use her same name in this post for some reason. And the title of the post is social justice posturing on track to contaminate Montessori education? No question mark at the end of it. So I think she's basically saying it is. She's not really investigating. She's telling you what she thinks. And it's one of the worst blog posts I've ever read. I can't even make sense of it. So let's try to break it down. What are her main points? Well, this picture describes it well. I have no freaking idea. No idea what her main point is in this whole rant that she goes on. She seems to be going off on a million different subjects that basically saying that since racism is ended, then America's great. That's really where she's going, and that Montessori is really messing that up. So let's begin with why she thinks this way. And these are the first few sentences of her blog post. And it says, unfortunately, Montessori organizations are caving to the social justice movement. Two major Montessori organizations, Association Montessori International, AMS USA, and the American Montessori Society, we'll get to what those are in a minute, okay, have supported or sponsored Montessori conferences that featured workshops or lectures on understanding cultural racism, diversity, anti-bias, LGBT students, and much more. The proverbial etc. that we were told not to use in our writing back in 6th grade. The conferences were put on by an organization called Montessori for Justice. And so, this whole thing opens up a whole bunch of questions, especially if you don't know Montessori. So let me just break it down a little bit here, all right? First off, what is AMS and AMI? If you go back to her point, she says some Montessori organizations are caving into the social justice movement. Two major Montessori organizations, Association Montessori International USA, which is AMI USA. AMI is one of the main Montessori organizations. The other one is AMS, which she mentions next, the American Montessori Society. You don't, for the purpose of this article, you don't need to know much more than these are the two biggest Montessori groups in the world. AMI and AMS, they are in charge of a large part of teacher training. They're in charge of promoting Montessori. They both put out magazines and articles and a whole bunch of stuff related to Montessori. So for the purpose of this, I'm not going to get into detail on it, but as far as this article is concerned, those are the two biggest Montessori organizations in the world. She asks about she mentions a group called the Montessori for Social Justice. Now, Montessori for Social Justice was, sorry, wrong page, was started in 2013. It's a relatively small organization. By relatively small, I mean it's not as big as AMS or AMI. They do have a following. They do put on and organize a lot of workshops, teaching things like teaching teachers about things like what was said before, how to deal with your LGBT students, diversity, anti-racism, things like that. So they do deal with social justice issues, things that teachers need. And they have raised a lot of awareness for Montessori and these issues. They do have a website, montessoriforsocialjustice.org, that you can check them out. Worth plugging that so you can learn more about them. So this is a very confusing paragraph because she talks about things that teachers do need to learn about. Every teacher needs to improve their understanding of structural racism. Every teacher does need to improve their understanding of LGBT, not just students, but parents as well. And just so, you can you could make sure you're trying to make people feel more welcome into your school. Every teacher needs to learn these. So she's tying that all in, but she starts off with, unfortunately, we're teaching these things. Now, there is some question about, how much emphasis different organizations are putting on these things. Are they putting too much emphasis in that and sort of diluting Montessori? But that's not the point that this author's making. And I think that's a perfectly valid discussion wherever you fall in the category of this. But I think we would all agree that this person is making the point, and you'll see it as we get into the article, that these things are not important to learn, and we should not be teaching these things to teachers, which is completely, I don't think, on anyone's radar as far as a legitimate conversation that we're having. So let's actually dig into the things. We have to dig into some other things. First off, who is this person writing it, and what website was this written on? Both of those are important because we're going to see a huge bias, and just it automatically, right away, it gives a lack of credit. Like, it takes away credit for this particular article and this particular author. And but even then, we can't ignore what the article actually says and whether the points are valid. So we'll get into that after we talk about it. Let's talk about the website first. This is a website, the American Thinker. It's just a basic, like, you can submit a blog that's either racist or homophobic, and they're just gonna print it. This is a great example of it. What we know about gay tastes. Want to know what gay tastes like? Try rainbow Doritos. I've read this many times, and I can't read it with a straight face ever. PepsiCo, who makes Doritos through a subsidiary Frito-Lay, I do know how to say those words, I just got tongue-tied, are producing a homosexual version of Doritos called Rainbow Doritos. That's right. What's going on in your cupboard? What are your Doritos doing with each other in their privacy of their cupboard? Well, apparently they're getting all for gay. I've never heard of Doritos having sex until now. Doritos are a product marketed to children. News to me and every other 40-year-old that's got a belly I've got. They're marketed to children, so they make the perfect gateway snack to introduce children to the joys of homosexuality. I don't care how many times I say that, I can't stop laughing when I do. That's the most straight I've ever said that. No pun intended on straight. I just meant straight-faced. I've ever said that line. So yeah, apparently the American Thinker thinks that Doritos are getting children into the gateway of the joys of homosexuality. Like, children are just sitting, like a bunch of teenagers just sitting at home and like, man, I got to come out to my parents, but I got to be gay because otherwise, I'm not going to have Doritos. It's exactly what I need out of life. I need I need gay Doritos. That's what every person is thinking when they're struggling with these issues. It's true. It's scientifically proven. Of course, I'm being sarcastic here. So these are the type of articles that they do. They got sued by Dominion, had to do a rejection of Dominion, the voting machines. They're very anti-Muslim. It's just a cave to page through their book. But that gets us to Charlotte Cushman. This is one of those articles that she's written. She says, it seems as though the world has gone insane, and it has. American cities are being burned down while police are told to stand down. Now they know right away that what this person's political leanings are. She's a nut job, just gonna come out and say it. This talks about her. She's also written 3 books. I have a quote from her last book and the last thing, but she's wrote this book, Your Life Belongs to You, and it's how to teach American history to children. And when I quote her book, you're all just gonna if I will be able to hear the eye rolls even from the people who aren't watching this live. This was the same article that I'm talking about here, but it was printed on a different website who also didn't bother to put a question mark at the end of her title. You can see it's one of its ads sponsors is the My Pillow guy. Yeah, that's right. Creepiest guy to ever have pillow talk with. It also talks about Montessori education by posting an apple on top of a bunch of textbooks. So if you know me or if you talk to me, that's one of the worst portrayals of Montessori education. You might as well have with a blackboard in the background. Might as well just had a bunch of children sitting around chairs raising their hands, right? Waiting to get called on. It shows they know nothing about Montessori and they're just reposting this article anyway. This is, before we get to the actual article, this is from her book. This is from Charlotte Cushman's book. Your Life Belongs to You, a true story about the birth of the United States. And this is in the opening of the book. A long, long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile. And I knew if I had my chance. Oh, no, wait, that's Don McLean, American Pie. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. So she starts off with her book about American history with Don McLean, just to get you thinking that she's right here, right? So I'll try to sing this to you. A long, long time ago, the people who lived in Europe didn't know very much about the world. What? Then in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America. I almost went into another song, which might get me banned from Facebook Live because I'd sing the bad word. But yeah, so she's claiming that Columbus discovered America. Oh, and we just know how wrong that is. So her writing is full of just errors and mistakes and just a whole bunch of issues that go beyond everything that I want to get into beyond the scope of this article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share with you. Let's see. Right, so here's their article. Okay. Click on share. And I got to click on, here it comes. All right, I got to go to the top of the article. Sorry. So here's the article. I just want to read through it and just talk about how little it makes sense, I should say. It says, unfortunately, I already read this part, but talking about how AMI and AMS are sponsoring these conferences. Now, some of the conference workshops were probably done at the AMS and AMI conferences. Other workshops, maybe Montessori for Social Justice, went ahead and did some workshops, and AMS and AMI were a part of that. Whatever the point is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that AMS and AMI are supporting these good freaking workshops. And all she can do to counter it is say, unfortunately, and throw out phrases like the social justice movement. She goes on to say another Montessori organization, the Montessori Foundation. By the way, when I post the repost this, I'll make sure that links are to all these good organizations. The Montessori Foundation has formed a task force to address and act on several issues such as eradicating prejudices, establishing a social justice curriculum, and so on. I need to slow down while I'm talking because I'm talking too fast and stumbling over my words. Again, good for the Montessori Foundation. Fantastic that you're doing that task force. Hope it's going well. Then she says, well, this is news to me. You can just picture, I don't know. I have a picture of her in my head. I've seen a picture of her, but you could probably get the similar picture in your head where this old retired teacher's like, well, this is news to me. And she's just grunting at it. Oh, she's drinking her whiskey at the cobweb-filled bar. I'm not saying she's an alcoholic. I'm just saying, like, it's just the image I have in my head of someone that's going off here. I had no idea that Montessori is a biased, racist educational system, but look what she just did. She just basically pointed out that Montessori is doing all this anti-bias education, anti-racist education, and now she's saying it's a biased, racist system. It makes no sense. It's like she's talking about it being this way and being this great, and then she's saying, I had no idea it was the exact opposite of what I just told you it is. She says, I frequently get emails that mention ending systemic and internal racism. I'm sorry, you should get emails. She wrote an article on this blog, this website blog thing called Have We Moved Past Heterosexual Romance? It's where she's basically claiming that if homosexuals have romance with each other, heterosexuals can't have romance with each other. Duh. It's the dumbest thing you've ever seen. Like it just doesn't even make sense cognitively. So she gets all these emails saying we need to move into these directions, and she's right that those emails are right. Not that she's right. She thinks those emails are wrong. Then she gets into some weird stuff. She says racism claims that a person is determined by physical factors out of his control. She keeps saying his. It is the 21st century. We did make their control legitimate. You can actually use their control. But no, that'd be unsexist of me. So out of their control, such as skin color. Kind of right. Yeah, there's a lot more to it, though. But she starts off this paragraph with something that you can't really argue against. It's sort of right. But then she just flips it into something completely off key in the same paragraph. It does not recognize the ability of a person to think for himself, come to conclusions and form his own character. That doesn't really make sense in terms of what she's talking about with racism. The next paragraph, the antidote to racism is individualism. Now, individualism, when she's talking about here, she's partly right. And this is where it gets sticky because she'll sometimes be partly right and partly wrong. She's talking about a lot of the Montessori ideas of individualism, children thinking on their own, children being independent, blah, 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 things like that are key to Montessori. But what she does is she puts it that this is the only thing we need to do to end racism. She's totally ignoring what she's thinking is, okay, children who are independent and clear thinking and who are respectful of each other, all those Montessori ideas, that's going to end racism. She's coming from the perspective that there is no such thing as systemic racism. There is no such thing as racism on such a level that it can't be taken care of on the individual level. And we all know that's wrong. I mean, it's not even worth debating anymore. We know that's completely wrong. So her viewpoint on that is terrible. She goes, what can be done to end racism? This is the part that really kills you. Like I have trouble not cursing as I read this and replying. So if one slips out, I apologize. She said, the United States has already done a massive amount to end racism. That doesn't excuse the fact that we have a lot more to do. We have a lot more to do. So if you're dismissing, she's dismissing it entirely. She's dismissing the fact entirely that we have a lot more to do because we've already done stuff. It's sort of like, if your house burnt down and you're like, well, I washed the dishes. Who cares? You still got to freaking build the frame and build the entire house again. Washing the dishes isn't enough. It's like, I've already done a lot. I've washed the dishes and I bought some sheets for the bed. Yeah, but we don't have a bed to sleep on. You still got a lot to do. It doesn't mean you did something before you're excused. This one totally gets me wrong. She's talking about the United States. The United States was the first country created that recognized individual rights. It was created during slavery, and no, it's not the first one to recognize their individual rights. That's just, like, if you truly think that we have no point of discussion, because I'd love to see her references for that. She goes ahead and admits there was slavery. Yes, there was slavery in 1776, but slavery was not unique to this country, as if that excuses slavery. But it was the idea of Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal that led to the Civil War and ended slavery in this country, which is amazing that she could say that on this blog, that the Civil War was because of slavery. On this blog, I'm surprised they let that slide. I bet you any other blog about the Civil War says it wasn't about slavery. It was about I like my flag, or or I like pro wrestling, or I want Skull, whatever things that this website tends to come up with for those things. So yeah. Anyway, this is just a hard thing to read through. It's funny in a way, and it's sad and pathetic in a way. It's scary in a way. It's like all three equally on the same level. After that, after slavery, after the Civil War, remember this, after the Civil War, people were allowed to freely associate with each other. Associate with each other freely is how she says it. So yeah, remember, we had the Civil War, and then there were, it's like, yeah, go ahead and use my water fountain. I know you're black. Go ahead and use it. Yeah, you can sit on the front of the bus. Sure, you can sit on the front of the bus. Yeah, that just all happened right after the Civil War. No. The Civil War was like 100, and the slavery ended like, just a few, like way after the Civil War. I think it was not all of a sudden we had a Civil War and like then everything was equal. Boom. The end of slavery, everything's equal. We're all cool with each other. No, we're still not cool with each other. Here's how she justifies that we're like everything is great after the Civil War. We had a black president who was elected to 2 terms. Yeah, so everything's great, right? This is her argument, not mine. She says Oprah Winfrey is really, really rich, and she's black. So everything's great and equal, right? Right. This is her argument, not mine. I just might clear that up after I say all these. It is why we have entertainers like Nat King Cole, Johnny Mathis, and the Supremes. 3 groups that grew up in the 50s and 60s when segregation was huge. Not realizing that they are popular, even though there was massive segregation back then. It's not like they were like, oh yeah, we could just go out and do anything now. No, you realize how hard those people and the Supremes had to fight to get like to the level that they were at. They had to go over 10 times the hurdles that white entertainers had to back then. So it's the worst examples of entertainers. Like, she would have been better off going with Kanye West, to be quite honest with you. I mean, like, Kanye West is just entertaining because he's so bad at what he does. But that's a whole different blog post. Anyway, she says Montessori method does not ignore the rational. Sorry, my computer just froze for a second. I hope I'm still on. She goes on to. Anyway, she goes on and on about how individualism is going to end systemic racism, but she doesn't believe in systemic racism. She openly says that. So it's a very, 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 very confusing article, to say the least. But she contradicts herself left and right and right and left. But here's what actually is really important. I'm almost out of time. she misses the key essence of Montessori. She misses what basic Montessori is. It's not just about getting children to learn math or reading, which she doesn't really address here. She doesn't address things that are Montessori. She talks about getting children to respect each other, individual, building up the individual child, building up concern for others. She does mention that those things are Montessori, but she doesn't see the Montessori in the whole big picture. Montessori is about changing the world, and that's something. Changing the world through education, and changing the world through a specific set of ideas about childhood development and education lining up with those ideas. And that's how we're going to change the world. It's not about changing yourself, which she seems to suggest. And it is about tackling these very big social justice issues. It always has been. Montessori started off tackling the social justice issues of her time. For her, it was feminism. That was huge in Europe and in Italy in the turn of the century. She fought for feminism. She fought for the women's right to vote. She went to medical school, which was unheard of for a female at the time, almost unheard of. And she really, really fought that. She was fighting this, and she fought for the children's rights. She was fighting things that were very, very, very big and crucial at her time, and very big and controversial. The Montessori organizations are doing that right now. They're getting us to look at, whether you like how much they're doing it or not, they're getting us to look at these issues in a big way. And that's very important, and actually a key part of the Montessori movement. So to totally dismiss those things is actually to totally dismiss the key and central point of Montessori. Montessori has always been about a cultural change for the better, and seeing it through building up the child, and through building up the child to be able to go out into the world and tackle these big problems beyond just personal racism, beyond just how I feel about other people. It's about the big whole entire world, and getting people focused on improving our whole life as a world and as a community. So she totally misses the boat on what Montessori is. And I don't think any Montessori person takes this seriously. I just hate that Montessori was put in that light out to the world. So I think it needs to be addressed, and that's my attempt to do it. So go out and educate anyone that brings up this article. So as a side note, I've only got about a minute left on this recording. I want to tell you that I'm restarting my blog again. I have not started it yet, but it will be imontasomething.com. Monta, like Montessori, before the S. So imontasomething.com. I'll have a link to it once I get this up, but I'll have other videos too, so you'll see those. Thank you for watching, whether you watched live or whether you watched this recorded session. Thank you for watching it. I hope to hear back from you, so feel free to leave a comment. Once I post this up, I'll put the links to all the good organizations that we talked about on the website, so you guys can check them out. Thank you, guys.